Oregon's been the best football program overall in the Pac-12 since Pete Carroll left USC in 2009. How will the Ducks fare against the Big Ten? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. All right, let's run down the Ducks against the Big Ten. First of all, let's keep in mind that this has been an elite program at its peak. Did not win a national championship in 2010. Came within one kick, 1 second, one play of defeating Auburn, getting to a national championship. Of course, they would have had a tie and played in overtime, to be more precise, in that BCS championship game, and then lost to Ohio State 4 years later. But they've reached the pinnacle under Chip Kelly. Had a building program in the 80s and 90s that, again, reached the zenith under Chip Kelly, and has been a good program ever since then, a top 15 to 20 program in the country. Mario Cristobal taking the Ducks to 2 Pac-12 championship games and a Rose Bowl win, and he was 35-13. Now let's look at how the Ducks have fared against the Big Ten since 2000 and how they project forward. Most recently, of course, as a 2-touchdown underdog, the Ducks went to Columbus and upset Ohio State. That Buckeyes team went on to win the Rose Bowl, and the Ducks won that one 35-28. The Rose Bowl win against Wisconsin at the end of 2019, we referenced a close game that went down to the wire. Justin Herbert and company won it 28-27. Michigan State in another bowl appearance and another 1-point win for the Ducks in an ugly game over the Spartans 7-6 in the Red Box Bowl in 2018. In 2017, Oregon faced what was the beginning of the down time for Nebraska, a 4-8 Huskers team, and the Ducks won it 42-35. The year before, they went to Lincoln, lost 35-32 when they tried a 2-point conversion after every touchdown, if you recall that one. That Huskers team finished at 9-4. In 2015, there was the culmination of a home-and-home series against Michigan State. 2 really entertaining ball games. A 9-4 Oregon team in 2015 lost to a playoff-bound Michigan State team 31-28 in East Lansing. The season before, the Oregon team that went all the way to the national championship game defeated Michigan State 46-27, and that Connor Cook-led team that won the Cotton Bowl. That team, of course, for Oregon, moved on to the national championship game, bested by Ohio State 42-20. Go back to 2011 and a great Rose Bowl showdown against Russell Wilson and Wisconsin. That Badger team finished at 11-3, and the Ducks won it 45-38 as Wilson was firing into the end zone to try to tie the game at the conclusion, but the Ducks held for the Rose Bowl win. In 2009, Oregon faced the Big Ten twice, first against Purdue, a marginal at best Purdue team, 5-7. Ducks won at 38-36, and then later they met Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. They were roughly a 5-point favorite in that game, but Chip Kelly's team lost to the Buckeyes and Jim Tressel 26-17. 2008 was the first of a home-and-home series against Purdue. Ducks won that one 32-26 against a 4-8 Boiler team. Michigan, Oregon, really nice series here in 2003 and 2007, and the Ducks won both of them against quality Michigan teams that went 10-3 and 9-4. The Ducks blasted that second Michigan team 39-7. There in 2003, we see a bowl matchup against Minnesota. Great game in that one against Glenn Mason's team, a Gophers team that finished at 10-3, 31-30, Minnesota. Wisconsin was a home-and-home series in the years of 2000 and 2001, and there was a split against a Wisconsin team that went 9-4. Then the Ducks won the return trip against Wisconsin 31-28 in 2001. All told, Oregon went 11-6 against the Big Ten since 2000, 3-2 in bowl games. How good were the Oregon teams, though, against the Big Ten teams? Because there could be a disparity there. Were they fair matchups? All these Big Ten teams combined went 152-70. The Oregon teams went 165-60, so they were not a ton better, but decidedly better. 13 games better in the win column, 10 games better in the loss column. The point differential in these games, Oregon outscored the Big Ten in these 17 games by 47 points, so less than 3 points per game. And also keep in mind that Oregon went 5-0 against unranked Big Ten teams. We saw where they faced two Purdue teams that were under 500, a Wisconsin team that only won 5 games, a Nebraska team that only went 4-8, and a Michigan State team that finished at 7-6 after the bowl loss to the Ducks. Oregon, therefore, went 6-6 against ranked teams, and they faced some really, really strong competition, of course, as they took on an Ohio State team that was the best team in the nation in 2014 and the national championship game winner, a Michigan State team that went to the playoffs, and, of course, an Ohio State team that bested Oregon in the Rose Bowl and finished top 5 in the nation. These Oregon teams, over the course of these 23 seasons, won 212 games, lost 80. So that is a top-notch effort out of Oregon. 140-57 in the Pac-12, so they've won nearly 3/4 of their games, about 72-73% of their games in the Pac-12. Of course, Oregon is not only facing the current Big Ten teams, but they're bringing 3 schools with them that they have a lot of familiarity with. So let's check out the Ducks against USC, UCLA, and Washington. First against the Huskies. It's a Washington series here, 61-48-5, but in recent times, Oregon has dominated 15 of 18 wins since 2004. Huskies came back to win the 2022 matchup in a classic. Washington's been the better overall football program since the origin of the two programs, with 61% winning percentage compared to 57%, more conference championships, more NFL draft selections, 315 to 236 in 28-22. But much like the Oregon dominance in the series since 2004, of course, Oregon's been the better program more recently. In the Washington video, we checked out the Huskies' accomplishments and results on the field since the year 2000, and Oregon has been a much better football and more consistent football program, as Washington has basically only had its peak under Chris Peterson recently. So many of these stats compiled early by Washington, Oregon has been catching up in the last 20 years or so. Oregon, USC, of course, USC is the class of the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-8, whatever it's been, all throughout history. So USC owns this series 38-22. But again, Oregon leads the series 6-2 since Pete Carroll left USC. USC's 8th all-time in winning percentage, Oregon number 41, and rising. I can only imagine where Oregon ranked in winning percentage 15 years ago. USC's won more conference championships than anyone in the Pac by far. And, of course, the NFL production line at USC is historic, second in overall draft selections, second in overall number 1 picks, so they completely dwarf what Oregon has done historically. But, again, the Ducks are catching up, but it's going to take a long time to catch USC. And USC has, of course, been one of the dominant programs in the history of college football in ranking in the top 25 and at number 1 as well. Oregon against UCLA. Ducks own this series 10-1 since 2008, but UCLA had a huge lead before that. If you add it all together, they're extremely comparable and even, but of course, Oregon's been a much better program this century, while UCLA had dominant teams going back into the 1950s and 60s and really good teams in the late 70s and throughout the 1980s, and much better than Oregon during all that time. But Oregon is catching up significantly. The winning percentage is almost identical. UCLA still had more Pac-12 championships, and of course that's not going to change as both teams are entering the Big Ten in 2024. And UCLA has had a strong showing in the NFL draft with the 15th most NFL players, and in AP ranks in regards to how many weeks UCLA is placed in the top 25 versus Oregon, it's not even close, even though, again, Oregon, there is no question, has more AP rankings in the last 20 years, much more than UCLA, but the Bruins had such a strong lead in that matchup for decades. Yes, we have likened Oregon to Penn State. Penn State, a better overall program. When Oregon hits its peak, maybe they challenge USC, Ohio State, and Michigan. Oregon's going to win 8-9 games in the Big Ten just about all the time, and they're going to compete for championships at times as things are running right now. Let's keep in mind just in the last few days that one of the top 100 players in America out of Gardena, California, flipped from USC to Oregon right after Oregon, and that entry into the Big Ten was announced. So could it affect Oregon's recruiting in a positive way? We would think. Our thoughts about Oregon competing in the Big Ten. Will they be the elite? Probably not consistently. but a major, major factor in this conference going forward. Your thoughts about the Ducks in the Big Ten down below, right here at the Voice of College Football. See you next time as we measure up the Huskies against the Big Ten.